my industry used to be guys in cars with cameras. And now the industry in total is moving into a digital solution. And the future of insurance investigations is going to be primarily digital. Now, with that comes a real ethical charge.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm joined by Marci, the CEO of Fraud Sniffer, a leading name in the insurance space. At RevGenAI, we build podcast-led outbound and thought leadership content systems for B2B founders. And this show is where we're focusing on how leaders are really adapting to AI to generate real revenue. We'll explore how Marci and her team are creating impact, scaling growth, and shaping the future of insurance investigations. Marci, it's really great to have you.
Thanks for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be here.
Of course. Can you just give us a little bit of a background into Fraud Sniffer, what you focus on, who you serve, and really how you guys developed into the business as it exists today?
Sure. So Fraud Sniffer is started as a social media investigation firm. And that's because my background has always been in technology and that kind of intersection between people and technology. And I was approached by my brother, who was a claims adjuster. And he said, we're losing our shirts over here with these claims. I wish there was a way we could mine social media to get actionable data out of it. And I said, well, we could probably do that. So we were off to the races. We've built our own proprietary software for housing and doing analysis of the content that we find. There's a big document management challenge in storing and working with social media data because it continues to update. You need to pull it off from the servers, and so we've spent a lot of time working in that part of the space. Now, because we're in the investigation area, we had to also expand into expected areas. So, for instance, physical surveillance, skip tracing, locating people, things of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, this is such an interesting use case of technology that I've never really known existed until now. And so, you mentioned location searches, physical surveillance, and social media surveillance as your main services. I'm curious, which of those is creating the strongest revenue momentum right now, and why?
Well, they're all very popular. The reason that we've seen growth in the social media area in particular is because it's sort of hit mainstream. There's a new sector in our world, in the investigation world, that's hitting mainstream, and that's more of the locating people who don't want to be found. So we can buy data that shows where someone physically was at different points in time during the last 2 years. So, they don't have to have an officer or an agent following them around. You can just sort of take a look at what they've been up to. And then if something interesting pops up from that search, then you can start assigning more and more, if needed, more aggressive surveillance techniques.
Yeah, it's interesting and a little bit concerning that maybe the ability to surveil is getting so high tech. I mean, I'm curious because a lot of people talk about AI in theory, and I'm really curious how the AI is actually transforming what you do in your world beyond just being useful in investigations, which I imagine can be very helpful with processing this large volume of data. Where does it become risky because of mistakes that it could make, or compliance, or legal issues that come from it? And how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So first of all, I think you've hit on a really important point, and that is my industry used to be guys in cars with cameras. And now the industry in total is moving into a digital solution. And the future of insurance investigations is going to be primarily digital. Now, with that comes a real ethical charge. And we have a policy inside of our four walls where, and we write it on all of our reviews and often, no life ruining. So we will do the investigation to provide the answer that's required for the assignment, but we don't go any further than that, right? Because with all the data available, you could find out anything about anyone for all of time. And we really, so when you're looking at it from an AI perspective, we really are very, very cautious about AI. We don't really use it for a whole lot. And the reason for that is when we have a guy in a car, we can't have AI write the assignment. Like they can't upload the video and have AI analyze it because you have to tie it back to the case and you have proprietary information. You don't want to put anything out into AI where it can be discoverable later. That has huge implications for us in a regulated industry like insurance, where, the people that we follow aren't playing by any rules at all. But insurance it's regulated. It has to follow all the rules. The attorneys have to follow all the rules of due process and, regulations about surveillance and so on. So, in this artificial intelligence era that we've found ourselves in, you wind up sort of really being very cautious of what you're outsourcing to a machine versus what is your work product. And we've seen attorneys, even on the plaintiff side, get into enormous trouble because they'll write their entire legal brief using AI and it starts citing cases that don't exist. And it provides links to cases that don't exist. It can be very dangerous. And we're also seeing pushback from our clients where they're very concerned about personally identifiable information and HIPAA information being released out into AI. So even if you are buying it and using it proprietary, or you build your own solution using your own AI, they're very cautious about it because nobody is 100% confident about what the bot is doing in the background.
Yeah, I think it's a massive issue, and there's companies that are positioned to take on that risk because the implication is lower. But then there's companies like yourself that are so deeply connected to really, really important outcomes and really sensitive data.
So picture this. We often have to go and testify. So I'm the person who testifies for Fraud Sniffer when there's a question about a report. And I can only imagine how horrendous it would be to be on the stand and have plaintiff's attorney pull up my report and point to a line that was written by AI that isn't right, and then ask me about it.
Yeah, that's
everybody's nightmare. And, we're trying to solve for that. And there's this AI goop and slop and incredibly ridiculous information all over the place. We're trying to figure out if our subject, the person that we're following, is using AI slop to create their own social media profiles. Like they can use slop from 10 years ago, put it into AI and create a new image. So then what are we doing with that? Is that a real image? Does that show that they have a traumatic brain injury? Does it show that it doesn't? Does it show, what does it even mean?
Yeah, the lines between real and not real are getting harder and harder to distinguish. I think humanity as a whole has a lot to contend with in that regard. And I'm just curious, because you're in such an important space, how do you really feel or envision this problem being solved when it comes to accurate AI outputs?
You mean for work product? Like how can you get your work product to be accurate?
Yeah.
So we have we have been successful in testing where we do it line by line. Like we'll put one image into a proprietary, like paid for, confined AI that we own, and it will describe the image to us. And then if that description is correct, we will copy and paste it into our report, line by line. You can't put 10 images in because they'll be wrong. We've tried it. If you take a picture of someone sideways like this, and there's a chair in the back, it'll always say that that person is in a car. It doesn't matter if they're sitting in an auditorium. It just can't read it correctly.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point. Definitely figuring out how to increase accuracy and reliability is going to be essential, and finding the process that works and having a tight grasp on it. And I also really like that you guys have your own proprietary AI system that isn't exposing, this data to external companies. I think that that's also a smart move. On the podcast, we like to talk a lot of times about demand generation, because this is obviously our key focus. And so I'm thinking about how insurance buyers. I know you mentioned that they're difficult to convert through ads alone, and so I'm just curious, how are you building trust before a buyer is ready to engage, and how do you really think about relationship building and thought leadership playing a role in that?
Right. So referrals and having a stellar reputation in this business is the most valuable thing you can have. The most success we've had with converting is when it starts with a referral, and then our salespeople get involved, and then they meet me, and then they watch 10 podcasts that I've been on, and you can tell when we're getting a new client because the metrics on our website show this post. All the blog posts have been read. And then we get like a request for information about our software security. And then, and it sort of moves along in that way. Content is key, as you know. And also, just being there and being present for really important conversations, let's say. So, for instance, we're part of a couple of groups where it's lead referral network between different attorney firms. Just being present in the room and being available to them. If they say, hey, I have a client I want to introduce you to, you got to be on the phone like that, because you can never be busy. I don't know, am I answering your question? I feel like I'm off on my own here, taking a little walk in the woods.
No, I think that you highlight something that is obviously the number one most important thing for a business is to have a good reputation, have useful case studies, and then also have a way of consuming that expertise before any decision is made, right? That's what content is for. And building that credibility is essential nowadays. That's how people are making decisions. I'm curious though, when you look at Fraud Sniffer's growth, what do you identify as the real bottleneck? Is it getting in front of the right buyers, having the right conversations, or being able to prove an ROI to those prospects? Or is it navigating compliance, or is it just the lengthy sales cycle that insurance has?
So a little bit of it is the sales cycle, but if we had to put a finger on it, it would be the way that people's careers change in insurance. We'll spend a year getting to know someone, and they'll start using our service. And then, because insurance is impossibly huge, they'll get moved to a different department. Because it's probably their career desire. As a career person, they probably wanted to go to a new division. But then as a vendor, we're like, so you find yourself often starting over and over and over again with the same clients. You'll have a great track record, but they'll call somebody up who has a relationship with a different vendor similar to yours, and they're like, well, I don't know. I think I like those guys better. You just never know. There's not and in the TPA side of our business, the adjusters that use us change from one client's desk to another, to another, to another, like dominoes. Like they're just always moving around. So a good adjuster will take us with them and recommend them to their new clients. So then we have two clients. But sometimes, you'll have the desk go empty for a year, 2 years. No one's even working the client. So you'll have a good client that you have a good relationship with that you don't get referrals from for 6 or 8 months because there's just nobody working the desk.
Yeah, it's a real issue, and I've seen that for a lot of the clients that we work with as well. Is that you start to reach out to these executives, and especially with the data points on where they're currently working can only be so accurate. And so half of them have already moved on to the next company by the time we're reaching out to them. And that's really the challenge is how do you create the right relationship at the right time to ultimately bring in more business. I think that there's definitely no replacement for having an excellent reputation, delivering excellent service. Those are the one, level one, but then being able to actually create that relationship and initiate it in an effective way, I think is definitely very, very important.
One
I,
of the ways we've solved for it somewhat is to work in the feeder and referral sources. So for instance, if you want to work with an attorney firm, if you want to work with an insurance firm, become really good friends with all the partners at the law firms that they like to use. Because those, in the interim where there's an empty desk for 6 months, a lot of the claims work winds up sort of, in a way, on the desk of the attorney who's handling the cases. So they'll go ahead and use us during the time when the desk is empty. And then by the time a new adjuster or a new, risk manager comes into play, they'll have a whole desk full of our work and it'll just make sense for them to continue on.
yeah, that's an interesting strategy. I know that you have such a wide range when it comes to, and also the way insurance deals are priced. There can be a very large range between smaller accounts to very large carrier relationships. How does that really affect and change the way that you prioritize outreach, sales effort, and relationship building?
Yeah. Well, to sort of help everyone out in the podcast world understand the level of magnitude of a carrier. If you would become the sole provider for a carrier, you would, for my size, you'd just probably go out of business. It's too big. There's thousands and tens of thousands of cases open at any time in a carrier. So, you have to pick one that you can be successful with. So we like, for the size of our business, as we're getting, better at our skills and honing our technology, we're working more with self-insureds that use TPAs. That's been a real sweet spot for us. So we'll get in touch with the risk manager and the workers' comp, risk manager, and build a relationship there and work those through the TPAs. That way, when we have a new client, we get maybe, 20 or 30 more cases a month instead of 6,000 all of a sudden at once in a giant avalanche of work. So, yeah, part of our growth strategy also has been to engage with private equity. So we took on a private equity partner, and now we have 2 other partner companies inside of our little arena. And now we're working toward, getting SOC 2 compliant and building large systems. We all of a sudden have 300 people instead of 30. So, as we're meshing this thing together and getting compliant and getting all of our technology working together, then we'll be ready to talk to a carrier and potentially be able to handle that work. Growing organically in insurance is not always the fastest way to do it because it's so hard to get clients and You get a new client and another one drops off, and it's just, you can get so big, but until you start really, until you, like, once you're ready to take the leap into carrier land, you really have to do something drastic.
Yeah, it sounds like there's not an easy bridge between that massive client and kind of a way to continue to step up to that level. And so I think that can definitely be complicated, because you want to ultimately be able to continue to maintain your stellar relationship of, being able to be on delivering the quality of service that you have been. I like to ask this question because it gets creative answers. Is if you had a magic wand, what's one thing that you would change in your business tomorrow to be able to make your own growth easier?
Man, the magic wand that I could put in place tomorrow. I would like to have, God, that is a really good question, to really move us to the next level. I'd like to have our technology straightened out between all of our new entities so that we're one giant machine. And then once we have that, I think we're going to be unstoppable.
There you go. That's what you can focus on for the next year. And once you got that, it's not going to be tomorrow, but that's it's really good, because then you get clarity on exactly what will make a big difference in moving the business forward. Last question before we wrap up is, if you had somebody who's interested in getting into your industry and selling into regulated high trust insurance deals, what's one piece of advice that you would give them that would help them save a lot of time and anguish that you've had to go through to get to where you are?
Number one, keep your ethics straight. Know who you work for and know what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Second, it's got to be two pieces. Sorry, I can't do it in one. Keep your record straight. Don't lose anything. Keep everything, document everything, and keep it for longer than you think you have to.
I'm sure that has been a lesson learned from from not having done that earlier. But Marci, thank you so much for sharing these insights with us. I'll of course leave your links down below for anyone who wants to reach out. But any last words to leave us with?
Oh, well, I just want to say again, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And come check in with us again next year, see if we got it all straightened out.
Thank you so much, Marci.